Tuttle here. It's storm season in Oklahoma, and with that comes torrential rain, high winds, and hail. To protect your home and your family from these threats, the one roofing company you should trust is Ferguson Roof Systems. They've been providing the best in roofing services for nearly half a century. Ferguson is Oklahoma's full-service roofing company, certified with an A+ Better Business Bureau rating and a 5-star rating on Google. And with Ferguson now offering Class 4 impact-resistant shingles, now is the time to trust them with your home's roof. Get started today at FergusonRoofSystems.com.
Hey everyone, Meteorologist Aaron Tuttle with you. It's time to talk about the weather once again. I always thank Ferguson Roof Systems for supporting what I do. They've been around sponsoring my live broadcast for a couple years now. And they still continue to win the Best Honors Awards. They won the 405 Best Roofing Company, so outstanding. So if you had that hail damage not long ago and you're like, man, I got to get my roof done, give Jamie Ferguson a call. He'll take care of you. They have 5-star reviews and they don't mess around. And you know how hard it is to keep a completely clean 5-star review? It's almost impossible, and they strive to do it. Even my weather app, which I think is 5 stars, only has like 4.5 point something. At one point I had 5 stars. It didn't last long because there's always some trolls out there. But it is what it is. If you don't have my weather app, pick it up, by the way. It's called AT's Weather To Go. It's Apple, Google Play. You might need it. We're talking about the thunderstorms that are coming our way for tomorrow. We're going to get into that here in just a second. We're going to let you know how much impact that you might have with regards to severe weather. Let me see here. Let me get my broadcast started on my phone again. It just croaked on me. I don't know what that's about, right? Hold that thought. Be right back. Not really. I'm not going anywhere. Just taking a second. All right, there we go. Okay, so that's up and running. By the way, thanks you guys as always for shooting me stars on Facebook. So I do appreciate that and your support in that fashion. Also liking and sharing this video with your friends and family. Tell them about AT's weather when it comes to tracking tornadoes across Oklahoma and surrounding areas. So sometimes I do cover North Texas or Western Arkansas or Southern Kansas, that kind of a deal, as we get into the meat and potatoes of the season, which we are because May is our peak severe weather month here in Oklahoma. So usually right around the middle of May is when we get our most tornadoes in Oklahoma. Now, we started May very quiet. I mean, we're day 3, rather. Hey, looking pretty good, right? Can we get through day 4? We'll find out. All right, quick look outside. We've got 62 degrees here in my backyard. Oh, by the way, if you're on Facebook, click that link I just posted to opt in. If you're getting late notifications when I do go live, if you're watching the replay right now, the broadcast, you're not being able to see it live, tap the link and that'll get you going for anything that is on the current side. That way you're not missing out. But anyway, so we're cooling back down. That was a really decent day today as far as temperatures are concerned. We had some clouds and of course some rainfall out there. Let's see. Let's take a look at current conditions out there currently. Well, that was a double. How do I manage that? Current conditions currently. All right, man. We've got mid to upper 60s here in central southern Oklahoma. Still some 80s, though, out in the panel as far as temperatures were concerned. When you did see a lot of sun today and very in the way of little cloud cover. But as I mentioned, temperatures have cooled back down, so now we've got some 50s sneaking in there. Otherwise, a lot of 60s across the state. Winds also fairly light right now, and they'll pick up a little bit for tomorrow as we have a little bit of a change coming our way. Rainfall amounts today, the highest on the Mesonet up around Bessie and Butler, down around Fort Cobb, about almost 1.5 inches. Down here at Ketchum Ranch, 3/4 of an inch. Acme there about under 4/10. Closer here to south central Oklahoma, Pauls Valley, 1/4 inch. Washington, Chickasha up around 2/10 at most. Down here Newport, Medill up around anywhere from 2/10 to maybe as much as 1/2 inch there around Ringling area. So it was a very narrow track of who got beneficial rain, but we'll take anything we can get. And of course that situation has cleared on out and moved on out. We do have some new activity though in its wake. This batch out here across western Texas Panhandle, right here on down southward. This is indicative of another wave of rainfall. This right here will move also off to the east overnight tonight into tomorrow morning and throughout the day on Thursday. We do have a risk of severe weather from Texas all the way into Oklahoma. If we do a close-up view of that, it does kind of put the brakes on in southern Kansas. Now, right now, the Storm Prediction Center is favoring this little brown area for a 5% ring for probability of a tornado. Now, just to give you perspective, that's extremely low. All right, the green is basically a CYA, can't rule it out, freak event category. Okay, that's 2%. Anyway, some hail up here in the shaded area, broad area of just some wind. Most of these storms will be hail and wind producers, and there'll be some big hail with that. Here's a close-up view of that, broken down with some cities on it from the National Weather Service for the severe weather potential. Hail up, they've got up to around golf ball size, but I've seen some data that could indicate baseball, but you have to have some pretty good instability. And right now, some of the latest data indicates we might have a lot more clouds and some off and on showers and storms that kind of help keep some of that instability lower, which means your hail size will come down quite a bit, but the winds will still be up there pretty good. They also have that tornado risk kind of highlight a little bit better out in this area in the green. Now, of course, is that the way it's going to be, or will that change any? So we'll take a look at that here in a second with the newest data coming in. Weather Service also keeping kind of the western area of eastern Oklahoma in the yellow shading for some potential for severe weather for Friday afternoon and evening. Now let's go look at the algorithms. This is the machine learning code, also known as kind of a artificial intelligence. And it's detecting kind of a broad area as well in this region. It gets a little excited up here in Kansas and Nebraska. It's probably an error. But you can see it kind of paints the same outcome at the Storm Prediction Center as far as the green shading is concerned. Here's some hail and here's some wind. So it's not really excited. There's another version of this, different algorithm basket. It also favors kind of this little sweet spot up here across northern and northwestern Oklahoma, a little brown spot there, tick. But again, that's only on the 5% range. It goes up to 60%. So if you're asking what's the difference between 5% and 60%, oh, a heck of a whole lot. It's kind of a confidence factor. If you read the fine print, it says chance of a tornado within 25 miles of a point. So that's a 5% chance of a tornado somewhere in this area, whereas we could be seeing a 45 or 60% chance. Now, typically on probability forecasting, it never gets this high. It's very rare to see that happen. And it's a human factor, really, is what that is. It's a confidence factor. And no human is going to be so, well, I don't say no human. Most humans won't be that certain, right? They'll have a little self-preservation of dignity and respect should they bust horribly on the forecast. And they don't want their name attached to that. They'll be the laughing stock of the weather community. So really, there's a lot of chickens out there as a result. Yeah? If they were to really go with their gut, they'd put that 45 or 60% out there, and some of it would verify. But then they'd fall on their face on a few others. Eventually, it'd all wash out. But needless to say, that's a probability scale. All right, so in other words, it's going to be low for tomorrow. So let's take a look at the disturbances in the jet stream pattern in the upper levels. Let's go 500 millibars. And there's that little disturbance that moves through overnight, signed to tomorrow morning and afternoon. And then let's jump into the afternoon period. So we do have kind of this slight southwesterly flow moving through, like so. And we do have these little colors that represent lift in the atmosphere, just kind of scattered about. So there's no one huge storm system. It's just broad overall, what we call subtle lifting. When it comes to the wind field, the jet stream aloft, in other words, winds up around 300 millibars, typically you need to have a really good punch of wind. Now around mid-afternoon, 4 o'clock, we do have a little bit of a wind that kicks through, and this aids to help the growth of thunderstorms and help their severe magnitude to develop a little bit better. But that starts to move off in the evening. So it's a very short 3-hour window, in that area, and then it moves off kind of the east and dissipates a little. It stays confined down here in the southern Oklahoma. So what we're saying is, in the late afternoon, early evening hours, we don't have a lot of support in the upper jet. This is pretty weak sauce for some tornadic type thunderstorms. All right, let's take a look at the timing of things. And you can guide that by the 700 millibar map. So this is the vertical velocity chart. So let's go here to the morning hours. So this is daybreak. And you can see all the red, which indicates the very strong lift. So this would be your focus area where most of the showers and thunderstorms will reside. So let's zip on through this to noon, see what happens. We have one little wave that pushes off. There's a little heavier rain that moves through. But you also see this little light lift that remains kind of in central Oklahoma. So that's kind of a secondary batch. And it never really leaves. So what I'm saying is it's a very broad lifting day for tomorrow with just scattered showers and thunderstorms off and on. The model last night we looked at actually hinted at this outcome. And they all finally kind of came around to this, which is going to help to lower instability. We'll talk about that here in a second. In the afternoon, though, it does like the little sweet spot up here and down here for northwest, southwest Oklahoma. As typical, usually this time of the year, usually get a little better heating and just some usually better ingredients to kind of set up. So that's kind of how the timing will set up. And in the evening hours, you still have the lift that goes on overnight for a little while until the storms finally die out here in northeast Oklahoma. So that's kind of the timing on our Thursday. So kind of keep the umbrellas handy off and on throughout the day. Now, a lot of times you'll hear talk of a dry line. We really don't have a dry line tomorrow. The dry line is a separation from moist air and dry air. So let's see what happens. By the way, we start this map. Here's dew point values into the 50s. here in the green and 40s and 30s in the brown. Again, very dry out there for this time of the year. It's unheard of, especially this first week of May. All right, so let's go into tomorrow. So we'll head to the morning. Now, of course, things will moisten up because of the rainfall that moves through. That's how can you see this green area kind of expand. That's just rainfall from the sky and then moistening up the lower levels. And then we get into the midday hours. So here's 1 o'clock. All right, we're going to do 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and usually 4 to 5 o'clock when things get really exciting when it comes to developing severe storms. Okay, so what do we have here at this point in time? Well, we do have, and I'm going to have to draw it a different color because it's not technically a dry line. Let's see which, yeah, I'm using the her. All right, so we'll use the her here. So let's just do this little trough axis that kind of comes something like this. All right. So technically it's not really a dry line. What it is a wind shift line. It is a convergence line. So in other words, the dew point over here is 62, dew point over here is 61. So it's not a dry line. Now, way out here is dry air, but this is where the dry line has not set up yet. In other words, this dry air that feeds in has to mix down at the surface and create a hard boundary. It's not doing it because this isn't really that type of a strong system. So all you need is some subtle lift and a little surface boundary to get the storms to go. So this will be our axis to get thunderstorms to refire during the afternoon. They will fire along this and then move in this fashion. So that's why you're going to kind of have repetitive areas of some scattered showers and storms. Okay, so let's go to the next deal. Now, why is it going to rain off and on? Usually we talk about a cap, right? Now, if we took a look at the forecast for tomorrow, and we'll go to the afternoon here around the early part of the afternoon. So this is around 2, 3 o'clock. This little dead zone here, this is where there's no cap in place. Well, guess where that resides? Right along the edge of our surface boundary. So that's why you'll get these thunderstorms kind of regenerating and then moving to the east in somewhat of a capped atmosphere. But if they can get rooted enough, again, that's where your hail and wind threat comes a little bit stronger. And it stays uncapped during the late afternoon. And then during the evening, see all this red kind of shows up? That's where the cap builds back in after sunset, which is typical. That usually happens. Okay, so let's go to the severe significant tornado parameter. In other words, where are the best ingredients for tornadoes? This depends on which model you're using. So right now we're going to look at, I believe I have the NAM called up here. All right, so the NAM, and it's extremely weak, by the way. It's kind of favoring this little spot here in southwest Kansas, northwest Oklahoma. And it also kind of favored an area down here across far north Texas. There's some scuttlebutt here in southwest Oklahoma. But so seriously, this is the lowest, the weakest signal you could possibly ask for. So it's not that impressive. Kind of give you an idea, this particular model up here for forecast sounding in northwest Oklahoma. Wind speeds at this layer mid-levels of atmosphere are pathetic, 15 knots. Extremely hard to get a tornado when you have winds this weak in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And remember, there's no upper-level support, so winds upstairs are very weak as well. Now, the sounding will still say possible hazard type, and the reason for that is you have directional shear. In other words, you have a southeast wind at the surface, which turns to a southwest, southerly, southwesterly, and westerly direction with height. So it's a staircase corkscrew. All right, so as that goes up with height, you will get some turning, significant hail and analogs up to around baseball size. In this particular case, Cape pretty decent. Shear, it's decent enough where you could have a storm that tries to tornado. So that's probably why there's a SPC outlook up there in that region. It's just not very strong. It's kind of on the low end, about as low as you can get. It's very difficult. And if you do get a tornado, usually in that environment, they're a little weaker and they don't last as long. So again, that's kind of all good news. You want to look for things that go against tornado genesis, just like you would look for things that would cause tornado genesis. It's a balancing act. Okay, so let's go to the HER. We're looking at two of our highest resolution models within this parameter we're looking at. There's a few other ones I could look at, but it's just kind of give you an idea of where they like to see the different focusing mechanisms. So the HER likes this focus area, which is kind of in this zone, which is basically south central to west central Oklahoma, for the same idea of a potential tornado. And if I were to pick a sweet spot in here just to see what it looks like in the forecast sounding, same idea, good turning with height, although this particular model likes the winds to be a little stronger. Still has potential hazard type of a tornado. Still has significant hail, although this is quite not as big in the analogs. Let's see, shear's decent. Ship model, though, still 1+. You're still looking at golf ball size hail. Somewhat dry in this area of the lower levels, but not too bad. So same thing, kind of a marginal environment for producing a tornado. So in other words, I can't rule out a couple of tornadoes tomorrow. But it looks like if they do occur, they'll be weak and short-lived. That's what I have for you. That's the good news. And it can really be focused anywhere. And we'll get to the complete outline. But for right now, kind of the favored region, which is different than we talked about last night, because remember the data always changes. That's why we don't go beyond 48 hours. From what I've seen so far, looking at the data, kind of in this zone is a potential for tornadoes tomorrow, which is within that green, big, broad area that the Storm Prediction Center showed. Let's see here. What I want to show you on this was the Cape and Shear, and we kind of already pointed out a couple of spots here in northwest Oklahoma. Again, here's the Woodward area. Well, that would have been the Woodward area. Let's try that again. Okay, so here we go again. Again, weaker shear in this vicinity of the atmosphere. Pretty messy. Still got some pretty good decent hail size indicators, so we'll see what happens. Can't rule it out. And then, like I said, back down here in southwest Oklahoma, these can be a little different. It kind of depends on what happens down here. There's a little bit more dry air to work with that works against a tornado, but on the flip side, you have a little bit better instability and you have better shear. The speed shear is better, stronger. So that's why you kind of have, it's kind of like you're splitting the state in half. The northern half has some ingredients, the southern half has some ingredients, but neither one is ideal. Let's see. All right, let's go to the timing of the storms. All right, so we got the rain that comes in tonight, northwest Oklahoma, early morning hours. That moves into central Oklahoma, so we're talking after most of you can get to work. If you're heading to work in the morning, to your office rather than just teleworking. That's still a thing. Scattered showers of storms all the way from Bartlesville to Tulsa, back through down toward the Lawton area, through the mid-morning hours, up through lunchtime. Now, if you notice, they never really quite end. You get some new bubbling activity up across the northern parts of the state. You get some new stuff developing down here in southwest. Remember, there's that little weak convergence line that's starting to develop down here, so that should help to generate more. And here's more developing along that part of the boundary at 3 o'clock. These roll through central Oklahoma, northern Oklahoma. And then you have another wave that tries to get going with some, that's where the dry line is really trying to get going out here. So it might be a secondary element to try to get some thunderstorms to generate down there. But again, each model is going to be a little different. In this particular case, the signature for these on a lot of this stuff is just hail and damaging wind. Now, we'll give you a caveat. We'll take a look at I think I wanted to see, was it this spot here? Yeah, but it may have been back an hour. Let me go back an hour and see. I looked at this earlier. Yeah, so let me do this. Let me get out of that mess. Let's see. So there's 8 o'clock. I think I did something down here. I looked at some data before we went live, and I did a couple of forecast soundings, and I wanted to look at something again. Yeah, so what happened was, for that storm, if it were to happen in southwest Oklahoma late evening, it comes into an environment here that initially isn't that favorable for severe weather, but because low-level jet kicks in, this round here in southern Oklahoma starts to moisten up last minute for the storm to enter into, which could help, in theory, keep a tornado potential going a little bit later after sunset, assuming that it's still rooted in the boundary layers. That's an area to watch late evening, south central Oklahoma. Just wanted to bring that up. But again, these models will not be that exact on the placement and nor the timing. It just kind of gives us a general idea. We'll go with we'll get another high-resolution model, give you an idea, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. You see how it's a little bit more centered to the south. The other one was a little bit more up in this direction. Let's see, we'll go through this with time. So actually this comes in through the daybreak hours. Remember the other one you're at work prior to? This one has it in at 6 a.m. So every model's going to be a little different. Scattered showers of storms, though, so just bank on it just off and on throughout the day, starting in the morning. This is the lunchtime period. That moves through for the afternoon. We have some new development tries to come through. Any one of these could have some small hail with it, even the mid-afternoon hours. Now, this particular case, this forecast sounding for Oklahoma City at this point in time has got golf ball size hail with it, a marginal risk for a tornado. So it doesn't have to be, late afternoon like we're normally used to, or evening. You could have a freak occurrence, the middle part of the afternoon if a thunderstorm kind of come over you at the right time. Let's see, here's 8 o'clock in the evening. There's another little batch here. Now this little cluster here that comes in Enid has a little helicity track with it, which again typically indicates probably has some large hail. Forecast sounding for it. Atmosphere is kind of moistened up a bit, probably from prior rain. The shear speed has come up just a little bit because it's later in the evening, but it's still a little messy. So, like I said, I keep repeating myself because so far everything I've seen on the data-wise, it's kind of the same thing. I'll go to this guy here, and let's see. Does that tell me anything different? Same story. All right. Let's go to the fantasy model. I call it the fantasy model. It's a FV3. It likes to really go nuts with thunderstorms. So there's your fantasy model late afternoon, moving through central southern Oklahoma and northwest Oklahoma. All right, moving on in. It's favoring northern Oklahoma pretty good for a nice little long-lived supercell up here. But what does the forecast sounding look like in the model data? A mess. Somewhat stable because it had a cap up here earlier in the day. Wind shear a little bit weak in the lower levels. So if that were to happen to be some hail. All right, let me go look at the tech. So let's see. Here's the morning stuff here. Moves off from central northeast Oklahoma. New stuff keeps bubbling up mid-morning. Here's another round early afternoon. See, there's a little historicity track right there mid-afternoon. That's why I'm saying I can't rule it out even here in parts of central Oklahoma. There's some new stuff there in northwest Oklahoma. Doesn't favor anything else after that for southwest. All right. And then finally our experimental model. Let's see what it's doing. Okay. Keep the stuff in the morning. Moves off to the east. There's some mid-afternoon, late afternoon stuff bubbling up there. Gets a little heavy in central Oklahoma for your drive time from work. Although not that intense, believe it or not. It looks pretty weak considering some new stuff out in western Oklahoma. Man, no helicity tracks with any of that stuff until maybe here in the late evening after midnight. Boy, this model just said it's a nothing burger. It says it's a bust of a forecast. Interesting. All right, so here's a look at the rainfall amounts. Now, again, we won't get the exact areas. We're going to get to the takeaway. Takeaway is when you get these heavy thunderstorms, you can up around 2 to 3 inches quickly. So that, in theory, could lead to some brief flash flooding of low-lying areas. Otherwise, much needed rainfall. And if you can get some tracks out here of an inch plus anywhere in western Oklahoma, you're doing good. Now, again, according to this model, don't say, oh, this one says there's nothing going to happen, no rain at all in northwest, southwest Oklahoma. You can't use these models like that. So if you see anybody watching me that does, they're idiots. That's no other way to say it. They don't know what they're doing. They're not Mets. Or if they're a Met, they're a really bad one. The models are not that good. What you do is a takeaway as to how much is the swing from the low end to the high end, and then what's the pattern distribution. Is it all concentrated in one area, or is it kind of a hit and miss? Is it in streaks? All that represents different storm tracks, the structure of the storm, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so there's a look at the potential rainfall across the state. Temperature-wise, as a result, kind of like today, with that clouds and rain that does move through, it does affect temperatures. So let's see what happens for tomorrow. All right, in the morning, of course, we got that morning stuff that comes through. So we'll be into the 60s, some rain-cooled 50s, looks like even parts of northern Oklahoma late morning. So that activity move off, but look how we try to rebound. So we do try to get into the 80s down here in southwest Oklahoma. But it doesn't last long. It quickly, with new development, cools back down into the 70s. That's where the red colored shading is in this area. So it does cool it back down a couple of degrees. Far southwest Oklahoma stays lit up a little bit. We're recovering the mid 70s here, but mid 70s is not that hot this time of the year when you're talking about trying to generate severe storms. So even northwest Oklahoma didn't really get too hot either. So we're lacking a lot of instability in the outcome. All right, let me see. Let me go to Saturday real quick, because Saturday was the other severe weather day, and I did not look at Saturday because the data wasn't in yet when I started this broadcast. And so we're just going to zip on through. So let's go to Saturday afternoon, 4 o'clock. Oh, that's nasty. Ain't nobody got time for this. 96 degrees. Woohoo! Man, that's around Kingfisher, north of El Reno. Oh my goodness. Sheesh. All right, so when you're looking at the forecast now, you remember how these lines here are usually pretty close to one another? We're talking about storms because that's the what we call the dew point depression. It's the difference between the temperature in red and the dew point in green. In other words, the moisture. Well, when it's this far apart, bone dry, my friends. You couldn't get a drop of rain if you paid for it and did the most cloud seeding in the world. So let's see what that looks like below the temperature layer. Let me go to, let's see which we want to do. I'm going to bet we had a pretty decent dry line form and go through. Just a hunch. Let's see what happens. Okay, so let's go to Saturday. So right back here, 4 o'clock. All right, so on Saturday at 4 o'clock, yeah, it's got a massive dry line that kind of zips through from Ponca City to Stillwater, Oklahoma City, Lawton, Wichita Falls. So, of course, what that means is out here, no storms at all. You get nothing. And then we watch along the eastern end of the dry line to get any thunderstorm development. So in this particular case, there's not a lot of convergence along this line. When you get a southwest to northeast lined up dry line, it's hard to get thunderstorms to develop. Let me see a quick look at the sounding. Yeah, we're still hurting. There's a lot of dry air even on the east side of that, hot temperatures. It's going to be hard to get any storms in this environment. So in other words, the forecast is going to have to change dramatically for Saturday to try to get some thunderstorms to develop. Yeah, the model doesn't even produce anything at all anyways, so keep it dry. So there you go. All right, let me go to the forecasted temperatures here for the next few days. If you like it hot, you're going to love this weekend. 89 on Friday, Oklahoma City, 91 for both Saturday and Sunday. Then we're into the 80s after that. We finally cool things down mid-May from 11th through the 14th. Over lows get into the 60s. That means the Bermuda grass starts to grow again and gets pretty happy. And then it's all she wrote. So again, a reminder, on Saturday I will be in El Reno for the Big Burger Festival. So come on out and see me. I'll be there for lunchtime as we cook this huge monster burger. I've never done that, so it'll be fun. So if you've never done it, go out there. It's a yearly deal. It's a big deal. It's an all-day deal, so bring the kids. Head on out to Main Street in El Reno for that event. I'd love to see you and chat with you. And Jody, of course, will be with me. I don't know if we'll have the kids with us or not. If it's 91 degrees, man, I don't know if they can handle that heat. We'll see. Let's see. What else? Get my weather app, AT's Weather to Go. If you don't have it, it's downloaded on Apple, Google Play. It predicts tornadoes, so it might be something you might need tomorrow on some of these freak events. As I said, I can't rule them out, although the probability is pretty low. Hail and wind, the main threats for tomorrow. Pretty much any time, mid-afternoons, basically after lunchtime, through the early evening, I'd say up to around 10 o'clock. It's a little bit of a bigger window because it's more of a scattered structure to it. It's not a brute force event where you have to have this in place, that in place, and then we all come together, then yada yada. It's a lot different than that. It's more of a subtle event for just gradual instability on a lower instability day, but enough lift to keep the thunderstorms going and enough of a focus at the surface to kind of keep them regenerating. And they kind of move over one place and another. And again, they'll produce some big hail and some wind. Golf ball size will probably be a lot of the bigger storms. And then there may be a storm that gets carried away with something like tennis ball size, but that'll be more of the outlier versus the norm due to the lack of significant instability and due to the lack of the fact we won't have extremely strong speed shear. We have directional shear, which gets those storms to rotate. We have to have speed shear to get the really good tornado threat going and to get really good hailstones going as well. So the updrafts can maintain themselves and lift that storm, make it really strong, robust, and last a long time so that the hailstones can stay propagated up there in the atmosphere longer and recycle and get bigger and bigger and grow and grow. So there you go. All right, listen, that's it for me. It is after 10 o'clock, so I'm going to get out of here. But I appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Again, make sure you like and share the video. It helps the algorithms. That way it keeps feeding you more content and tells others. And then I will probably, tomorrow's Thursday, lunchtime. I may do a lunchtime live, kind of give you an update. It'll be a quick one over my lunch break. So I may try to do that. Otherwise, I'll kind of keep an eye on things for tomorrow. And you do the same, and we'll talk again soon. Take care, everybody. Good night.